course, no one would say if they were asked, does your company have a purpose? It was no, not really. Making the biggest possible profit for shareholders. That doesn't work anymore. But one reason why it doesn't work is because it doesn't sell the product.
You are listening to the CRO Podcast presented by Kvadrant Consulting. My name is Oliver and I'm your host. In this episode, partner at Kvadrant Consulting, Nyvang Mariussen, speaks with Troels Rygaard, who is founder and CMO of The Bridge Innovation and former VP of Global Marketing in Foss. Together they discuss how to set the right team in marketing, how to handle and motivate young professionals, and how marketing can create a customer-centric organization through sharing insights with, for example, R&D. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome, Troels. So we do this podcast with various people, and very often the focus is on new stuff that's happening in marketing, new ways of working, new tools. But I thought today, because of the experience you have within the field, that it'd be interesting to talk about the people that make marketing work. And I think with your CV and the experience you've had over the years, you'd be just the right person to talk to about this. But I think instead of me introducing you, maybe you could just give a quick introduction to yourself and your background.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I've been a marketeer for the past 25 years, up and down the marketing value chain. I typically say, I have a foot in the present, so I help make business out of what we have in our portfolio today, our value propositions, our products, our solutions. And I have a foot in the future, so I look at what are the future demands, what's the next generation of a product family, what's the where's the world taking us? What do we need to prepare in order to have something to sell in 3 to 5 years from now? And that means that I've been working upstream, sitting on the lab of R&D, and I've been working downstream, sitting on the lab of customers and making sales tools, sales materials, sales training. So I've been up and down the value chain. Very much in high tech and mid tech companies. That's kind of my turf. And 15 years as a VP and senior director in international companies, 10 years as a consultant where I've worked for any size of company, but always about taking an idea, a product to market, bridging between technology and the market.
I think that's super interesting, and maybe this is a little bit of a weird question, but at this point, would you say your mind is sort of more towards, let's say, your professional discipline of marketing communication, or more towards business, where marketing and communication is just sort of a facilitator of achieving business outcomes?
No doubt that when I started, working in marketing, I found great pleasure and amusement and pride in coming up with a slogan, finding a fancy way to say things. So that was very much the communication part of it. Over the years, as I have worked my way up in the company, I've been given the privilege to be part of the business processes, the strategies, portfolios, designing portfolios, being part of corporate management. So today, I always look at where's the business, and for me, the purpose of a company is to make business. And of course, it means a lot how you, what products you develop. It means a lot how much you engage with your customers. It means a lot how you tell the story about your products. A lot can be said, and a lot of things can have, a good effect on your sales, and a lot can have a bad effect on your sales. So I think I always start with the business. How is this purposeful to the business? But I'm very interested in taking it the whole way from idea over products, over business case to actual execution in the market. And there is a big difference in how we promote it, where we promote it, to whom we promote it, how well we understand the customer, and so on. So communication will always be a very important part of it. You know what they say in my line of work? They say, what isn't said doesn't exist. So you have to communicate at some point in time. Yeah.
I told you, you've been in various leadership positions in companies like Ericsson, Velux, Oticon and stuff. Then let's say you're starting in one of these companies or a new company. What kind of people would you like on your team in marketing when you're trying to set the marketing organization? What do you look for in the people that you set for your marketing teams?
Yeah. It's been said before that you should always hire for attitude and train for skills, and that's, I would say, at least 50% of the truth. So you need people with the right attitude, and I've often been hired to transform marketing, to take marketing to the next generation marketing. So lately, from being a brochure factory to being a fully digital marketing function. And that means that you need people with the right attitude towards change. You need people that understand what is the purpose of marketing, what's the role of marketing. And no matter whether it comes, in the shape and form of a brochure, or whether it's a SOME strategy, or whether it's whatever, a customer event, they need to understand what's the purpose. So I'm looking for people who are actually engaged in the business, who understand the business. That's critically important, that they understand why we're here, and what can we do for our customers. But I've also worked with very smart people that didn't kind of fit in. They didn't have the social skills or the emotional skills to fit in, and then the team kind of falls apart. So it's also about having people with the right attitude towards collaboration, teamwork. I'm a big fan of trust, and if you can't create trust in a team, if it's constantly a pissing contest on who is the smartest or who has the latest data or who is best connected to the CEO, then you kind of lose the team magic that you need in marketing, because marketing is a team that's pretty challenged by a lot of functions in a company. So lately, that happens every time you transform, because the world changes. You need to hire people with certain skills. I mean, you cannot train all your people to be suddenly digital native or SOME experts or marketing automation experts, or they know everything about Salesforce or any other CRM system. So you need to hire experts to accelerate your capabilities. So that's kind of the balance. Find the right people, the people that are purpose driven, that know why we're here, but you also need people with the right skills, with the specific subject matter expertise, in order to really master the things that marketing is supposed to do.
If we go back to the 90s and sort of fast forward to now, have you seen, what are the major changes you've seen in sort of the hard marketing capabilities that needs to be on a marketing team?
Yeah, and I hope I'm not offending anyone, but 15 years ago, marketing was very much what you would call, it's not a very polite term, but what you would call the brochure factory. And that hasn't changed, because now you're just a website factory for some marketing. So it's not a matter of what's the channel, it's a matter of what do you do. But back in those days, as a head of marketing, you were more, a PMO, a project management office. You had a lot of campaign projects, and you were supposed to deliver the sales presentation to sales on time, and you needed the booth ready for the trade show. So it was very much a production kind of facility, and very campaign driven, very product launch driven, and very communication driven. We still do a lot of communication, but what I've seen happening, at least in my career, is that marketing has been moving up the value chain. So marketing is now in corporate management. It's part of the strategic process. It's part of the annual planning process. It's part of the 5-year, whatever you have as strategic terms, planning process. And you have to translate the strategy. You have to translate the technology portfolio into real value propositions, and you have to understand how to bring those value propositions to market. And again, as I said before, part of it is communication. You have to kind of, have a way of bringing it to market and making people understand what is it you can get from us that will help you progress your business. But it has changed a lot, so it's a lot more strategic today. And especially, I would say, in the past 5-10 years, the discussion about marketing being a data game already started 10-15 years ago. But you know how long time it takes before people start talking about it, before it's reality in companies. And today, with all the data we have available, and marketing is a center of data collection. It's a very different game. It's much more communication. Today we tell the communication people what to write and what images or visuals we want, because we have tested what works and we know what works and we know what converts best and we know how many clicks we get. And of course they're pretty annoyed, because it used to be an art. It used to be, they were artists, and they got this brilliant idea. It might not have anything to do with the business, but the aesthetics were perfect, So that has totally changed. So we start with the planning, we start with the data, we start by understanding what is the job we need to do here, and how do we then convey to the outside audience that we can actually help them do the jobs that they want to get done.
I think it's very much connected to this thing of marketing becoming more prominent in the business and taking greater responsibility for delivering business outcome rather than creative campaigns. But I think it also then has some capability requirements for the organization, right? That all of a sudden you can't just have creative people on the marketing team, but you need to have people that understands business and are able to translate marketing initiatives into business outcomes.
Yeah, and I would say understand business. Okay, that's totally fair, and you can understand business in many ways. But I would say at least understand the purposefulness of writing what I'm telling you to write, or understanding that if the customer is engaged in this problem or has this pain, then probably we should talk about that and not about our features. And it sounds so banal, but it's extremely difficult. Because what is the fallback plan for the copywriter when he hasn't really done his homework, when he doesn't really know what's going on in the company or in the mind of the decision maker, is to talk about the product, because at least he can go to R&D or to the product manager and ask them, hey, what's new and good about this product? And then we can talk about features. It happens all the time, So I think I understand the frustration, but I see some of the creatives really embracing the data-driven or the insights-driven approach to marketing, because they, that's really good. Now finally, I know what are the topics that I really need to hone in on, or where do I need to, get a better understanding, or who should I talk to really get into the minds of people. Not all do that. Some get really offended, and I have had people in my office shouting, "You don't tell me what to write." And of course I do, but and going back to the question about attitude and what kind of profiles, and some people can't change, so that's, and then you need to hire new people that can do that. And of course, digitization in marketing has opened up for a lot of new professions or a lot of new jobs where you need to hire people, with specific skills.
What would you say in sort of your average B2B company that sells some sort of equipment, hardware, plus some services? What should be the purpose and responsibilities of marketing, if it's not just brochure factory or production factory anymore? What are these new responsibilities?
That's very easy. We just have to take out the old blue book from CBS, from Philip Kotler, and look at the 4 Ps. I know that a lot of Ps have been added, but if you can manage the 4 Ps in marketing, price, place, product, promotion, then you're doing the right things. So what does it mean to manage the product? It means that you guide, you have authority in the pipeline, the product pipeline, in the technology pipeline. So you're not just sitting there waiting for R&D to come with something that they have developed, because they could. Pricing is also business modeling. So in the change we've seen lately, where you go into more service-based model, you go from CAPEX to OPEX, you know, software as a service, whatever, rent something and service included. That's also, I would say, something that marketing should be engaged in, changing the business model in that direction. Promotion, that's kind of obvious, and the place, well, for instance, a place could be e-commerce, where you see marketing actually in many companies taking responsibility for building up e-commerce presence. Very often you expect that e-commerce is very transactional, so standardization, you know, it's easy to standardize, it's easy to make user interfaces where people or customers can easily navigate, and you know, and they want the convenience of a click and buy and all that stuff. So it's obvious, but it's actually also moving into sales territory. You know, that kind of closing the deal has always been sales. But in my opinion, if you can manage the 4 Ps and you are allowed to, with the tools and channels and you know, insights available today, that then you can just start manning. So you need people upstream that knows about design thinking, about, you know, value proposition design, about technology, product managers, whatever they are, or just you know, UX people, design thinkers. And you need people that either can run campaign development or can develop campaigns. So either you have the creative in-house, or you have you have an agency, or whatever you have. But it's still important that you have the right briefings, that you know what is the story we want to tell, what are the sales tools that we want to develop. So when you start populating those functions, it's going to be a quite comprehensive and a quite influential marketing department. But in my opinion, that's the way you need to go. Then, of course, it doesn't necessarily have to be one department, as long as it's a marketing discipline that you're practicing, you know, understanding the needs before you develop a product and so on. So some of the design thinking can be in R&D, no worries. You also have concept factories, or you have garages, or you have whatever in companies. That's perfectly fine with me, as long as we agree on why are we doing this? Why are we developing that specific technology? And it's not a secret, and it's not even necessarily bad business always, but sometimes it's really bad business to develop something because you can. But really getting some customer-centric development thinking into your company is a big help for marketing, because if you fix the why from the beginning, then you don't have to make the long manuals. You don't have to lay all the lipstick on the pig and all the fancy brochures and all the expensive movies trying to make this product look super nice and fancy. You can just go and tell customers, you know, we fixed this problem for you. We gave you the next generation XYZ, and with this, you can solve these 3 major pains that you had. But it starts already there, and 5 years down the line, when you finally have the product ready for launch, it's a bit too late to find out that it didn't work. So I see marketing also playing an extremely important role in catalyzing that kind of development thinking.
What does that mean for leaders in marketing departments, or just in any B2B organization? If we think back sort of 10, 20 years, when it was a different type of marketing organization, to now, well, we have all these new roles that you're describing. Has it changed being a manager, a leader of these kinds of functions as well?
I think it's changed a lot. If you go back to the of course, this is a travesty of a creative person, but you know, the guy who said, you don't know anything about aesthetics, you know, and I have these fine feelings, you know, and red will never work in that picture, whatever. Those were the days where you had these eccentric people. Today, marketing people need to be a lot more stakeholder smart, you know, people smart, because you are constantly in a negotiation. You cannot develop the ideal products, or you cannot develop the idea for the ideal product and go to R&D and say, fix it, because R&D has scarce resources, technology is not mature, they have other projects, whatever. So it's a constant negotiation internally. So you need to have negotiators. You need to have people who can find the best compromise. And if you read the books of microeconomics, you know, microeconomics is about the optimal distribution of scarce resources. Sorry for that, but so that's actually also business and economics, of course, are closely related. So marketing people need to be really good negotiators. They need to find the perfect compromises. But they should not compromise by retiring and say, okay, then just go ahead and do it because we're not going to be successful at that. That's not the kind of, accountability you should expect from marketing. But if you can find the why is the purpose, and you can make the whole organization focus on that purpose, work to satisfy or to deliver on that purpose, then it's extremely strong. And purpose comes far, long before money, long before pay, because if you set out to really solve a problem for a customer, and you will develop the right things. You don't have to worry about the sellability. It will sell. And you don't have to worry about the value creation. You will create value. And with the value creation in place, you don't have to worry about the margins and the earnings and the profitability and so on. I know it sounds like, I'm a business hippie, but I've seen it work. I have worked in a company where there were no bonuses. I worked in a company where in a meeting, I just started. I was not an engineer. But in a meeting with 10 engineers, we talked about developing something, and you asked a silly question. Well, you say, there's no silly question, but you asked a question about, could you do this and that? No one would say, no, it has been done, or you don't understand. They would say, okay, that's a really interesting question. And of course, that would be the obvious thing to do. Let me tell you why we couldn't do it this time. Maybe we can. So there was a big trust in the room. Everyone wanted to kind of lean forward and do their best and give their best. And we had critical moments where we had to do things that couldn't be done. But because we trusted people to do their best, it was done. It was, in the industry, the most profitable company for several years, outgrowing the market. No bonuses, no pay, no pay raises, extraordinary pay raises, just deep trust and purpose. So, if you can define that purpose. And I see marketing as a very important catalyst, also because purpose is also part of the storytelling. You talked about communication before. Part of storytelling is if you can convey it in a compelling way, if you can make people say, I want to be part of that story, then that has a really, really, really strong effect on your ability to create business results. And I shouldn't say this. I've been blamed, but I have to say it. I never worried about the money because I have always known that if we do the right thing, the money will come. Yeah, it's terrible to be a businessman and have to admit that.
But I think it also, what you're saying is, it really adds to the complexity of being a marketing manager then. Sure. Because in marketing, they often find themselves in this intersection between other departments, right? Product development, innovation, sales, IT even. So they have to be able to navigate this really complex stakeholder landscape internally in the organization. Whereas, to put it a little bit on the edge, sales can sort of operate independently out there and just go out and meet customers. Where marketing is dependent on the collaboration with all these other functions.
Yeah, absolutely. But I see many good examples of marketing also being kind of a catalyst for transforming not just marketing from brochure factory to digital marketing, but the entire company to being more customer focused. In companies where you have strong R&D departments, the truth is that it's the next product that's going to bring a fortune to the company. So lifecycle management is not very popular. Marketing has done a lot to make sure that instead of looking at project portfolios in R&D, let's look at the commercial roadmap and let's find out what can we sell in the next business year. Maybe we don't need to develop so much because we actually have stuff that we can sell. We still have underserved prospects in the market. We still have people who didn't buy into second generation of this. We still have a big replacement market that we don't need to bring, a Nobel Prize invention, a spaceship, but we can bring them the next thing. We still have customers that have us, and you know. So just making a simple exercise where you look at what are actually my growth drivers. Of course, product launches is extremely important, but they take up far too much space in technology-driven companies or in companies with strong R&D functions. And there I think marketing has a really important job in helping plan the coming business year and making a roadmap. A roadmap is not necessarily a launch calendar, but a commercial roadmap where you can plan where do we make the money in the first quarter, where do we make the money in the second quarter, and then design the tools, the stories, the revenue campaigns or whatever we call them these days, but to maximize income on what we have and what we can do, and not always strive for the impossible, not always hope that when the next product comes out, I'm going to make my numbers. And that's a tough job, because in very technology proud companies, everyone, including senior management, believes that it's the next product that's going to save us. And I would say no, it's the next commercial initiative that's going to keep us on target.
I think that you're touching upon something we see so often in these innovation-driven companies, that you innovate and bring products to market much faster than the market can actually absorb them, or your commercial organization can get the market to absorb them. So you end up with this bottleneck where you're just sort of pushing products through, trying to get them to market and interpret getting them to market as now they're on the shelf, there's some material on it and customers can buy it. But in reality, you're not really thinking about getting it in the hands of paying customers. Whereas if you did that, you might look at existing products and say, well, it's not saturated yet. There's still room to grow this product here.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, if you have a fully penetrated market and you can see competition sneaking in with a new feature, you probably have to update your product portfolio. But if you have low penetration, underserved market, there's no need. It's probably, R&D of course will develop their way out of any problem. They say it's because we haven't developed the right product. I've been in hearing aids for many years, and when we developed a new product and we kind of framed the value proposition and did the campaign, the sales training, sales tools, any of the bigger markets that had the autonomy to and the money to make their own go-to-market strategy can't use this in our market because it's totally different. So you mean that people who have a hearing loss, they don't have this problem that they can't participate in the conversation, and you mean that they are not struggling in meetings? Yes, okay. But isn't that what it says, in the communication, that we can help you with that? Yeah, but I'm the GM here. I wanna make my own material, So, yeah, that's what have been one of my eternal quests. One thing is, let's develop the right things. Let's make sure it's purposeful from the beginning. Let's know what it is we are trying to solve for the customer. Circumstance, progress. Customer is in a circumstance. He wants progress. How do we help him get progress? And then carry that all the way through. We don't need to, when it's handed over from product management to brand management and they start doing the communication, they don't need to reinvent the story. The story is still, we are solving this problem for this customer, And that has been my eternal quest, to really make that chain come together, get trust with the different stakeholders. So actually have talks with R&D about what kind of innovation tools do we use. How do we set the scope from the beginning? What are the uncertainties we live with? What is good enough? When do we have a product? So you don't have to wait 2 years for an additional feature that's technology-wise, super smart and fancy. All engineers dream of doing it, but it has low value in the marketplace. So let's not wait 2 years and lose market share. Let's launch it now because we're already solving enough problems, and so on and so on. And all the way down to making that approachable for salespeople to onboard and not be scared that, but it's not super fancy and the competitors, they have, something that's twice as tall. Yeah, but you can't get in through the door. So that it's twice as tall, looks good in brochures, but doesn't work in the customer's side, All that stuff, really get some confidence in, because there's purpose through what we're doing, and you can be comfortable that you're solving enough of problems with customers for them to want to buy this,
I totally agree with the importance of getting the marketing discipline in the idea to product process. We see quite often that the product development process becomes much more a technical exercise. Here's something we could deliver. How do we create it? How do we produce it? How do we distribute it? And then sort of at the end, you bring in the marketing discipline and say, well, how do we get it to the market? And there was a lot of critical questions that weren't answered from a commercial perspective, such as, what is the purpose of what we're building here? What pains does it solve? What value does it create?
A lot of stuff, a lot of stumbling blocks. Just do we have a service model? Do we actually want to distribute this to the target group? Because typically we sold something 1,000 pieces a year to big companies, and they had it standing in one side, and they had a facility management. They could service part of it themselves, and then we had the annual service visit, preventive maintenance visit. Now we're selling to 200,000 people around the world because we found something handheld, smart, connecting to a smartphone. But can we service it now? How do we make a service model that's still profitable? Because it's smaller technology, it's out in a more critical environment, it breaks down. How do we think about that before you launch it? So think end to end. But going back to the people that you want to hire, of course it requires some guts, some confidence to challenge R&D. If you're in marketing, or to challenge the product manager says this is the best thing since sliced bread. Okay, but what will the customer say? How do I say, is this customer very fond of sliced bread, or did he used to use sliced bread, or what are we talking about here? That you really dare ask and get to a point, the 7 whys. You ask so many times that you really nail what is the silver bullet here. Why are we doing this? Of course, that instead of just saying, go and do your job now. Find a nice photo. I even invented the slogan, put in the slogan, best thing since sliced bread. So it requires people with a different kind of, confidence. They have to understand about communication, but even more, they have to understand about business, about jobs to be done, about all these UX stuff and all that stuff,
Maybe this is a difficult question to answer, but you could argue that, let's say, if marketing has traditionally been sort of a reactive brochure factory or reactively responding to requests from the business, that marketing could have a confidence issue in suddenly going to the product development organization and start challenging them on some of the assumptions they're making about the products they're developing, what markets they think they're going to adopt these products. So do you see sort of a confidence barrier that marketing managers need to overcome to fully engage in those kinds of new dialogues?
Yeah, I think that's probably the case in some cases. Also because success criteria, if you are a production house, success criteria is very much on timeline, on deadline, on budgets, in the right quality. So you don't ask questions. You just try to install some kind of operational excellence in your little factory. Going from there to asking questions, saying, why am I printing this? Why am I printing it at all? Why am I printing this sentence? If we want to show something that's robust, why do we have broken glass on the front page? And blah blah blah. So I think yes, it requires a different kind of role, but it's actually, and that's also kind of contradictory, because marketing people, they in the old school, they're used to communicating. So they want to talk, they want to send out messages. Now suddenly they have to use their ears and ask questions. They have to ask, okay, but if the customer wants to find someone who can help him with this, what should we tell him in order to attract him? What should we tell him in order to convince him that he should buy the product? What will be in the late stage where he knows that now he has to come up with a decent reason why to the buying center in the company? How have we educated him? How confident is he that he can meet the buying center? Can he handle some of the objections? What will be the objections? Now the risk. Now he's going to buy an expensive product, and what's the risk profile of this decision, and so on. Have we dealt with that? It's not, you have a lot of marketing people who don't even know about how do you sell. What's the sales journey, and what's the mental journey that the buyer goes through. Of course, we need to know that. Of course, because we need to develop the collateral, the messaging, the tools, the manipulation that progresses them in the journey. So we are very, we all know about the probability scoring in the opportunity pipeline, but we are more focused on the horizontal part of it, saying, okay, it's better to have a 50% probability than 25% probability. But how do we get from 25 to 50%? That's marketing should really engage in that and find out what are the causalities, what are the psychology in actually moving people down that path.
So something I've always enjoyed talking to you is your level of, let's call it empathy. But your sort of interest in getting into the minds of other people, primarily the customers, because that's sort of the role you've been in. So always thinking about what would a customer think in this situation? What would they do next? Where do you think that comes from? That sort of, or maybe I'm sort of over-interpreting, but it seems like every single conversation we have, you're sort of in the mind of the people that you're working to do something with.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I'm sure that some people that I met through my years would not see me as an empathetic person. They would probably see me as an asshole. But sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and we can all have a bad day. But actually, it's very simple. It's because I deeply believe that no one will buy something that's meaningless. I need to produce some kind of meaning in order to perform a buying action. It needs to be meaningful in some way. So I need to understand what is meaningful to these people. And can I create a little more sense, a little more meaningfulness than the competitor, then I might win the deal. So that's actually the reason why I'm really trying to figure out what's going on. And in the B2B setup, where I have primarily worked, but I've also worked in the B2C. B2C is much more difficult. I've done super interesting things in the B2B space to find out what's the trigger. In hearing care, people maybe don't want a hearing aid as the first thing they want to buy if they have $100 or $1,000. But what's the trigger? How do you get them to buy one? And even in the clinic setup, when they go into the clinic, do you show them the product as the first thing? Or do you spend 10 minutes talking about the motivation, their turn-ons and turn-offs? What converts best? So there's a lot of, you need to get into the heads of the customer. Also because a lot of the moments of truth in the buying journey, they are actually in the service and delivery model. It's not, in the product. You start out there, all the way out there, there's a category of products that I might want to buy. I want to buy a bike. Then you look for the brand you want. And then if you go to the dealer, typically what happens in Denmark is you go into the shop, no one will contact you, and after 10 minutes, someone will look up from the desk and say, can I help you? So the buying experience is extremely important for the final choice of supplier.
And your perception of the product even afterwards, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I'm flattering myself, but I have always considered end to end what happens when the product is going to be bought or used the first time. What do we need to have in place? In the hearing care, again, I talk a lot about hearing care, but we started developing demos when we started the development project because it took a long time to develop the convincing demo. So if it was an afterthought, maybe you needed something in the technology already in the product to demo it in a convincing way. And we know that hearing is believing. So we already took the sales situation into the product development to make sure we had good demos. Imagining, visualizing, what will that buying experience? Exactly.
Because it's also hard as a marketing professional to do your job well if you don't sort of do that full immersion into the buyer of the product itself.
Yeah.
One of my favorite examples is from the safety company that we've been working with for a few years. Whenever they have new employees, they have to go to one of their training centers and jump out from 5 meters, sort of as to immerse themselves into this product that they're selling. How does it feel to jump out from 5 meters? How does it feel to be trapped in a helicopter underwater and have to swim out? And I think that's such a cool way of getting them to fully immerse themselves into the minds of the customer, the user.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that kind of out of the comfort zone experience is important also for marketing, because in the role of marketing in this transforming time we're in, you will have to step out of your comfort zone. You will have to be the catalyst. You will have to have this unpleasant but super fruitful conversation with R&D about why are we doing this. And when I joined Vilex many years ago, any employee gets to put in a roof window. Start with a roof, take up the tile, and cut a hole and put in a roof window. I was so impressed. It's so brilliant.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of empathy you need with the product, with the installation experience, to really understand why is it important that we made the hinge that way, and why can I actually, how can I use that in my persuasion for someone to buy this?
And I think when I say empathy around, it's not sort of maybe empathy in the sense many would understand it, because I think you don't beat around the bush. You're sort of very direct. But it's that immersion into the world that you find yourself in, especially when it comes to the customers that you're trying to do something with in the end.
Yeah.
I just want to change the topic a little bit to make sure we go through the different things, because not only have you sort of been a leader of marketing organizations as a whole, but also a leader of leaders and setting marketing teams that have team leaders themselves. What kind of characteristics, let's say that you're setting a marketing team and need some team leaders in that, what kind of characteristics are you looking for in the people that lead marketing teams?
It took me many years to really become a leader myself. I thought I was smart and I had to be smarter than everyone, and I am smart, but even when I changed from being a project manager into being a leader, I constantly competed with my employees about being the smartest. And everyone knew we cannot do this before Troels has kind of approved it or acknowledged it. Super stupid. And then someone once gave me a real shitstorm, and told me that this is the way I think about you. And fortunately, it was a day where I was open for input. So I said, yeah, you're totally right. It's not good. So what I'm looking for is in leaders is someone that can actually develop talent. And the talk in the past years about the new generation of employees, the millennials or the Y generation, people who are super concerned about their market value. And I'm here to develop because I want to develop my career potential, and I want to develop as a person. And I think that's really good. If it's the only thing you want, and we are just a stepping stone to somewhere, maybe it's not so good. But let's use that energy and that potential and see how much potential we have. So I'm really looking for someone who have leadership potential. I would, in the past, I would have a tendency to hire someone who was an expert within the subject matter in that specific function. So the best in digital marketing would head the digital team and so on. But more and more, I'm looking for people who can really understand how do we make our employees shine? How do we how do we develop talent? And of course, you won't survive in a corporate setup if you don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, the buck stops there. So if you, as a team leader, you do not know what you're doing, you do not know the deeper secrets of your territory, then you will eventually fail, because you will maybe be made accountable for something and your explanation will be poor and all that stuff. So of course you also need to know, but you don't need to always want to have to be the best, So and then I'm also looking for people who are, because I have, as you said before, I'm quite direct, quite frank. So I want people who are not afraid to put, as we say in Danish, the fish on the dish, but to speak out loud. And it's really important to me that there's trust in a leadership team. If there's no trust, if you're constantly trying to protect yourself, if you are afraid of making mistake, or you're trying not to be accountable because, oh, that's terrible if I fail and so on, then it can't work. I've only seen it fail, So I'm also looking for people who are not introverts and who are willing to give that extra part of themselves to the team.
How do you cultivate that psychological safety? Because it is something that we see quite often too.
Yeah.
Either their people's egos getting in the way, sort of the perception of themselves.
Yeah.
They're not open to that being challenged, or they don't feel comfortable speaking up and sort of going into clinch around just topics on the table that we need to discuss. And often we think, that's probably symptoms of some sort of psychological safety missing. How do you cultivate that in a team?
Yeah, one thing is that I use myself. I'm not, I ask advice. I express doubt. I express emotion. I say, I got really worried, or I thought that was my last day on the job, or, you got to help me out here because my gut says one thing, my brain says another. What should we do? So actually displaying some kind of that I believe it's a safe environment myself. It's an environment where you can expose yourself. So that's one thing. Another thing is checking on people. Are you okay with that? It doesn't seem like you're okay with that, or how can I see that you're okay with that, or but doing this quality check. So if is that a yes? There's this famous analysis of the Clinton movie where he said, "I did not have beep with that woman," while he's nodding, and someone said he's lying. And so that's also my role as a manager, to make sure that, hey, you're saying yes, but do you mean yes? Sometimes you say yes, okay, I gave you a chance to say that you were not totally comfortable with it, but I guess you say yes because you believe you're going to make it, so go ahead. And sometimes I say, I can see you're not sincere. But being aware of is it game, is it play, or is it real? So I use myself a lot, sometimes maybe too much, because it's a very hard balance, keeping authority and also showing that you're just human. But it's part of my, personality. So I would rather, take the chance than.
And I think linked to the psychological safety, giving a bit of yourself as well in work-wise. One of the things, at least, we strive to do on all the companies that we work with is say, well, of course, we have to deliver sort of performance, strive towards excellence, but also, and probably connected to that, create great places to work.
Yeah.
A place where everyone who works on your team actually excited about coming to work. They feel motivated. They feel they have autonomy to do what they're being asked to do. They feel that they master, or at least moving towards mastery of their field. So this thing of creating a great place to work, is that something you think about as well in the companies that you go into?
Absolutely.
How to create a good environment for people to thrive in?
Yeah, absolutely. Today it's pretty commonplace that you have an Italian coffee machine. You can get some nice espresso in the canteen, or even in the small kitchens on the floors. You have a fitness room. You have fruit. You have a lot of stuff. So the physical environment is good. What I've seen over the years being the hardest part is the leadership culture. How do we really create a leadership culture where people feel it's a great place to work? We talked about purpose before. I think purpose is extremely important. Are we just saying that we're in it for the good, but at the end of the day we are just counting the money, and that's what is most important? So I briefly mentioned the new generations of employees. So when I need a data scientist today, she or he is 30 years old, just graduated, or second job, and they are purpose driven, by DNA. It's in their DNA. They expect it to be meaningful, what we are doing, and they will call out any bluff, So I see companies having a hard time. Companies that I work for, more old-fashioned, line organizations, struggling a little with creating a great place to work for these people. I've even been in discussions in senior management, management meetings where they were called out as spoiled kids, curling kids. They don't know. So there was no self-reflection that, hey, maybe we need to change in order to get access to what these people can do. They're kind of building the future. They are our future. So I would love to be able to say, these are the 3 things you should always do. But I've actually seen a lot of struggling around installing a leadership culture that was super productive to making it a great place to work. I much better understand today why you keep the appraisal talk, the annual appraisal, whenever you have it, how often you have it, and the salary review apart. Because I think what we need to talk about in the appraisal is exactly what are your development goals? What's your purpose in life? Where do you want to go? Where can we take you? And of course also talk about the performance goals. It's totally fair that you need some performance goals, otherwise, there's kind of no direction. And then we talk the rewards later, so we don't mix it. So because this carrot and stick kind of thing is not necessarily productive. At least a lot of research shows that it's not productive. So it took me some years, because I had a busy schedule. Why can't I do it in 1 hour with people and just tell them, you did good, that's why you get this raise. Now my point of view has totally changed. My understanding of it has totally changed. So we really need to talk about development goals, and people want to develop, especially the below 40. They want to develop. They want to. Now we talk about even the 60 plus wants to develop, but that's fine. Probably not in corporate setting. But so that's my personal kind of mission, to really use those occasions to make people feel valued, feel purposeful, and I think that's kind of what also makes it a great place to work.
And I think that's sort of there are 2 ways to look at. Let's call them Generation X or the new generation.
Yeah.
But at least I've seen some people write, oh, they're so demanding. They require, they constantly want feedback. They have to have a purpose for doing what they're doing. And there's sort of 2 ways to interpret that, right? There's one way you say, oh, that's annoying. Why can't they just go to their desk and do their job? And the other is, of course, to say, well, isn't that amazing? They're so engaged in their development in the company that they're looking for, why am I doing this? What's the purpose of this? They're looking to get feedback to improve. And I think what you're getting to, it's that latter part that's so amazing, right? That they're actually so engaged in what they're doing and in their lives that they're looking for this. But of course that is also, it puts then more demand on those in managerial and leadership positions, because that's the new expectations to them, that they're not just sort of handling the reporting and salary discussions, but that they're willing to engage back with the employees.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's a great opportunity. We need to be challenged, and that has always been the role of the next generation or the new generation, to challenge the existing. But we need to be challenged, and we need to find out how do we. Because no one would say if they were asked, does your company have a purpose? They would say, no, not really. Making the biggest possible profit for shareholders, that doesn't work anymore. And it doesn't work, and one of the reasons why it doesn't work is because it doesn't sell the product. So you also have more and more conscious consumers. So I think it's a gift that now you actually have the outside values mirrored in the next generation employees. So you should really, immerse yourself in that and find out how can we use that desire to do something meaningful to make sure that what we are doing is meaningful. And again, going back to, because I don't think anyone would buy meaningless products. At the end of the day, it's not a lasting business developing meaningless products. So, yeah, but it's a. In my role, I have been challenged with a senior management kind of tell them what to do and measure if they do it, control, and this kind of a lot of initiative, a lot of energy, a lot of super interesting, curious questions, and I love curiosity. You have to stay constantly curious a lot of curiosity around why are we doing it this way, why don't we do it that way. Take it as inspiration. But balancing that with hard performance KPIs on employee performance, I think it's tough.
One of the things in my sort of relatively short career I've enjoyed doing is throwing myself off balance every once in a while.
Yeah.
So getting out of this sort of set path that you put yourself on and doing something else. What was the last professional curveball you threw yourself where you thought, I'm going to sort of do something that gets me off balance a little bit, forcing me sort of that idea that if you're pushed out of balance, you're forced to be resilient and sort of develop. Any thoughts on what sort of the last curveball that was thrown at you or you sort of threw yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
And I'm asking because you seem like the person that don't mind getting off balance and then figuring out how to solve that new solution.
You know, and probably to many people this would not have been a curveball, but a pretty straight ball. But after working intensely in medtech with hearing aids for 15 years, and you only have my word for it, being an expert in the whole value chain, really, understanding everything, being a trusted sparring partner on technology choices, and all the way down to presenting a new products on a stage in the US in front of 1,000 people and deciding down to wordings and slogans occasionally, So really being an end-to-end bloated expert in hearing care, and then shifting to another company that had nothing to do with hearing care at all. No similar dynamics, no similar technology, totally new technology, and actually being reduced to being a marketing person, having to start all over, asking the questions, getting into what do customers want, what's the value proposition, what's in the pipeline, being responsible again here for all the way up to business development and all the way down to marketing and sales tools and customer marketing. That was a pretty a few days, I thought about, was this the right choice? But I like to challenge myself, as you said, so I think I'm going to get it. And
I think sort of, maybe it's more a sort of mental curveball than it is a professional curveball, in the way that I could imagine that if you've sort of been the go-to person, the oracle, sort of exaggerating, but within a certain thing, then suddenly not being that person anymore. What does that feel like? Are you okay not being sort of the go-to person anymore and being in a different kind of position suddenly? So even though professionally you might be very capable of making that switch, I think it's a huge personal and mental curveball to throw yourself. Yeah, but
and again, I was a fish in the water in hearing care. I navigated that easily, maybe too easily. You also sometimes you wake up, you're concerned. You say, am I really getting one of these? Self-sufficient fat cats, high risk, because I'm just human. So in that sense, it was a good challenge, and fortunately, it worked. All the marketing kind of basics, training, experiences, being a marketeer, kind of worked in a new setting. So that was also super, rewarding. That, hey, I wouldn't say it's simple, but it's kind of similar. You have the same kind of problems, you have the same kind of challenges, you have the same kind of opportunities, just in a different setting. So that was kind of interesting.
We have to wrap it up here for time reasons, but I think we could sit here and talk all day. Just maybe a last question. Let's think about it being 1999. You just started as director of marketing communication at Ericsson. If you could go back to the Troels back then, 1999, and give 3 pieces of advice.
Yeah.
So some recommendations for things you would probably sort of, with the luxury of hindsight, do different. What advice would you give yourself?
One thing I for sure would give, or one advice I for sure would give, it would be believe in purpose. Be purpose-driven. Believe in purpose. Demand that things are purposeful, and the rest will follow. Don't worry too much about making business cases where you adjust on the ASP or where you adjust on the peak volumes and all that stuff. Make the right thing. Make something that's purposeful, and the rest will follow. Trust in that. I can see every time in my career that we have returned to doing something. And I mentioned the case before with the company where we worked solely on purpose. We wanted to do the right thing. No bonuses, no nothing. Best-selling product ever. 2-digit year-over-year growth, 3 consecutive years. Double growth over industry growth, and so on. And that was totally purpose-driven. But sometimes you get weak. You need proof. You need to, or someone says no. And so believe in yourself and believe in purpose. Over time, you develop some intuition. Trust your intuition. Of course, you need data to back it up. These days, you can't go anywhere without data, but that's also good. As long as you find some kind of direction in your search for answers in your data. So trust your intuition and follow it. And the final thing, don't work so hard. Don't think you're indispensable. Don't work so hard. Take a sabbatical occasionally and charge your creativity, charge your humanity. And if you're a leader, delegate. Make people work hard for you, but don't work so hard. That's
super good.
I would say.
Thank you very much for your time, Troels. I hope to get you back in here again someday. Maybe we can follow up on some of the things we didn't get to cover today.
Yeah.
But thanks a lot for your time, and a pleasure having you in here.
Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to know more, you are welcome to visit our website, kvadrant.dk, and you can also follow us on LinkedIn.